So, hello, everybody. Welcome to another indie author interview. I am joined today by Clare Sager, who is the author of A Kiss of Iron, as well as A Touch of Poison, and the upcoming third, correct? There's another one.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's
Last
the
one in the
latest
series.
one. So thank you so much for taking the time to join with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. I'm excited.
Perfect. So we'll just get right into it. So tell us a little bit about when you decided that you wanted to be an author and what your journey and path to publication was.
So for me, it's kind of into books from a young age, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know about you, or if you maybe remember this or not, but like if you had the same experience or not. But when I was a kid, I was like, oh, books are amazing. And then I think I didn't initially realize someone's job is to get to sit and like write that. It's like they don't just appear on library shelves or something. It's like, oh wow, that's the thing that someone actually gets to do. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, I mean, it was like, oh, the dream. Um, but then again, it's that kind of reality thing when you're a bit older and people are like, oh, you can't count on doing that as a job. You know, you need to have a day job and then you can do that around that. Um, so yeah, I kind of wrote a lot in my teens and then in my 20s and stuff. But I didn't actually finish a book until I was in my 30s.
Mhm.
And then I went with indie publishing, which hadn't existed back when I was sort of first dreaming about that. So yeah, I kind of went that route in the end.
And what made you choose to go indie rather than trad?
So for me, I have always been kind of trying to look for a way out of the 9 to 5 day job experience because I don't suit that.
Mhm.
um, and I tried sort of various like business ideas before that because in my like I think like I say because I didn't indie had only started rising sort of from 2010 onwards.
Mhm.
Um, so I'd never looked into that until a bit later kind of thing. And then I was like, oh, so I can combine like writing and this kind of entrepreneurial work for yourself thing that I've always been interested in. So yeah, kind of I wanted to like run it as a business and maybe be a little bit more master of my own destiny kind of thing, which is only relatively speaking, because obviously there's still a stroke of like luck and what's happening, control of it exactly. But yeah, that's kind of the main factors I think really for me.
And I think, you make a great point is that when we were growing up, like indie publishing wasn't a thing. And I didn't even know what indie publishing was really, probably until I joined Book Talk, like in October. Like I had no idea what it was. So I think a lot of authors have said, master of your own destiny and being able to like skip all of that, querying and agent and all that stuff, and also being on your own timeline and being able to publish
Yeah.
you want rather than what the publisher wants.
Yeah, and I think that for me, part of like not wanting to be in the day job was the idea of I want to be my own boss kind of thing. And so this way I all the more am. Plus, I've always been very into like design and illustration and stuff like that. So it's really nice to be able to, I don't just write a manuscript and give it to someone else. I get to get involved with the whole process of like commissioning artwork, commissioning covers, deciding what the vibe and look of the physical book is going to be.
Mhm.
You can't tell, but behind me, we're having some work done on our garage. And behind me is basically tons of boxes of books that have been in the garage and are waiting for our home. So I've always been like obsessed with like the book as a physical thing as well, even though I read ebooks a lot nowadays. So getting to actually be involved at all stages, I was like, yeah, I like the idea of that.
That is cool. So how do you write? Do you plot? Do you plan? Do you quilt? What do you do? How do you make this book into a full novel?
So I do have like really detailed plots before I start,
Hmm.
but I will like intuitively sometimes go off of that. Like I'll get to a point and I'll maybe get stuck and be like, I'm stuck. And that's usually because something's not right. I need to go and have a think about it. Um, I kind of describe, I know people talk about like plotters and pantsers and discovery writers and gardeners and all sorts of things like that. I kind of describe my process as being a bit like an archaeologist.
Mm.
I will a book will kind of be in like low key prep, I say, and that means I'm not working on it actively, but there's an idea there, and I'm kind of gathering ideas and looking out for bits of research, and it's just in the back of my mind. And occasionally the characters pop up and say something to me, or I get an idea for a scene or something, or a location, or a bit of world building. So that's kind of all just like bubbles along, and then until the book's like, oh, it's your turn, you're next. I am actively working on you now. Um, but by the time I get to actively working on it, I've kind of got pieces, like an archaeologist who's got bits of a pot, and they're like, I've got this thing here, and I've got this thing here, and yeah, I was like would find it impressive. On There's a UK program called Time Team where they go and dig stuff up, and they'd be like, yes, we've got these three fragments of a pot, and we can actually work out from this that it looked like this, and it was this shape and this size, because they've kind of done mathematically worked out how, the circumference of it from that curve and things like that. So I kind of have to go, right, well, I've got this piece here, and I think that goes there, and that goes there, and that goes there, and then I start filling in the gaps and work out what the whole thing looks like.
Well, I think that that's a really cool way to describe like your process, about having like all these different pieces of it and then like putting it together, but then seeing how it comes together is, I mean, that must be, I mean, it's exciting for me reading it, but it must be really exciting for you writing it too.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people think, oh, if you have really detailed plot, sometimes people kind of accuse people who plot a lot of having being maybe a bit boring or predictable, or it's because they're maybe in some way not as creative or not as like in touch with the magical vibes or whatever. But for me, it's like that I have this all so many ideas, and I can see different ways they can connect. And if I were to try and do that whilst writing, it would be total chaos.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like I have all this excitement with the ideas, and I'm like, oh, and this could work like that, or it could work like that, and yeah, it's a really fun process. And there's a lot of like, and like I keep saying with part of this work we're doing in the garage is making an office for me, rather than just being in the spare room here. But I kind of like I want a murder board, so you can be like, it's a
Yes,
picture
yes.
here and a cord going across and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I find that really, like, to me, kind of the essence of creativity is about finding connections between things. And so I kind of find that part of the process almost like the most creative part in some ways.
And that kind of leads into the next question about like, what do you enjoy most about writing fantasy?
So, I mean, in terms of the genre for me, like when I was a kid, like I said, I read lots, but I quickly found like I liked books with a fantastical or a magical kind of element. My favorites pretty early on. Um, my dad was a big fantasy reader as well, like very much into fantasy and sci-fi, and I like started picking up his books probably like younger than I should have. Um, and I really liked them, but a lot of the time I found that they were like focused around male characters, and it was like, oh, the guys, and then oh, there is one token girl,
Mm.
and things like that. And it's a bit like, mm, okay, I'm really enjoying this, but could be better. Like, could be better for me, like for my taste. Um, and then I got to, I think I was about like 11 or 12, and the school librarian recommended Tamora Pierce's Song of the Lioness series, and I just like ate those up because like fantasy, the main character's a girl of like similar age to me, and there's stuff like she has a period and there's romance in it, so it's like it's not just, oh, this could have been a book about a guy but they've given her a girl's name. It's like this was very much more like a woman's story, and I
Mm.
was just like mind blown. So that kind of was like the earliest steer into like fantasy with romance for me, definitely. So that's kind of it, because it's like, oh, that combination, because I always liked, I used to read like historical romance to get that romance hit, and then fantasy to get, and I'm like
Mm.
both. So it's kind of that combination, I think, that is the for me.
And that like feminist fantasy, making like the female character like the main focus. So totally,
Yeah,
totally. Um,
100%.
So, what do you need in your writing space to stay focused? How do you stay on task?
So I'm wearing currently, you can't see under all this hair, but I have like my noise cancelling earphones in, and I always have like a playlist that is my writing playlist, and I play it in order, so it almost like programs me to
Mm,
be in that focus working zone. And also I've got next to me some I always have like scented candles. These are from Page and Wick because I'm a subscriber for them. So at the moment, I've got a little like pile of different scented candles next to me. So it's kind of like that's burning, that's another message. Um, and often either a cup of coffee or this I have currently is yuzu tea, which is one of my favorites. And again, like I kind of only drink that when I'm at my desk, so it's a little meant to be working signal to my brain. And then I do things like I don't do like strictly Pomodoro method
hmm.
with the treatment timer, but I do use an app called Word Keeper, which has a timer on it, and then I input how many words I did. And so if I were to like pick up my phone while that's going, obviously it goes straight to that as a screen. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm meant to be writing, not messing around on my phone.
That is an amazing idea. I have ADHD, so like this question is also like super interesting to me because one, I find out that a lot of authors that I've interviewed also have ADHD. But also,
Neurospicy.
yeah, those tricks that they have. So that's actually a great idea. I might actually,
Yeah, I think
even just for work, because it's hard for me to stay on task at work. I usually have an audiobook in. But that's
yeah,
it. I like
there's
Word Keeper.
so that yeah, so WordKeeper like and it tracks like the amount of time you spent and you can kind of say, oh, this was outlining, this was
Mhm.
drafting, this was editing. So and I quite looking at the stats after, so I have quite a good idea of how long it takes me to write a book now. But there's also a really good app called Forest. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Oh.
So annoyingly, they're not compatible with each other. I used to use Forest. But Forest is really cute because you basically have like for your week, you have like a square of land and you go, right, well, I want to work for 20 minutes. So I'm going to plant a little shrub or a tree. And over those 20 minutes, it will like grow. But if you go to your phone and go off of that screen and out of that app, it will die. It'll shrivel up and die. But if you just only have that screen up or your phone is locked with that up, then it will grow into like a little tree and you can set different timers and you can kind of collect different trees and stuff. And it's very much like, no, I can't let the tree die. So it definitely
That
keeps
sounds
you like,
amazing.
and it's cute as well.
I'm
So,
definitely gonna get that. I'm definitely gonna get that.
and it's free as well. Like, I think you can get like paid upgrades, like
Yeah.
the trees and stuff, but largely it's free. So definitely worth having a look.
And so, in talking about, ways to kind of stay on task and stay focused, is there anything in particular that does get in your way? What would you say is your kryptonite?
Oh, it's getting started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Like, and I'm cool with the like I was saying the ideas bit and stuff like that, but when it's like, right, we're starting a new book, starting drafting a new book today, or this week or whatever, and it's like, yeah, but I
Hmm.
could just go and do this first. And it's like just I think it's just that inner beginnings are quite hard, or they are for me anyway. And yeah, I think it's that just I've got to get started, and especially if you haven't, for me, I will write a project, edit it, do the publication stuff. And so it might be a while, it might be like months have gone by between finishing drafting this book and starting drafting the next book. So
Mm.
you've built up like resistance, you're out of practice, you've not got any momentum. So yeah, it's getting that boulder moving. That's right. And I'm like, it's painful that bit.
And getting started, like you said, like is one of the hardest things because once kind of you're in it, I can imagine that it's kind of like, okay, like it's flowing, like here we go. But it's just like actually like it's the motivation piece, and being like, I want to write this, like I want to do this, but I just got to get there because there's so much other stuff that I mean, I'm sure you have lots of social media management and trying to, promote your books, and then you have signings and this, and commissioning art and all this stuff going on, so starting a new project, it's like, oh, but I have all that stuff I also have to do, so like managing that's probably tough too.
Yeah, it's like there's always another email you could be replying to.
Yeah.
There's always another piece of work you could be doing.
All right. Well, let's go on and start talking about the book itself. So we'll just talk about Kiss of Iron in case anybody has not read it yet. But I am going to take the jacket off because I think that the hardback is just by itself. So if you had to describe A Kiss of Iron in one sentence or less, what is that sentence?
I would say, I had a good think about this, that it's spying, seduction, and shadows with court intrigue and kind of Bridgerton vibes. I think that's fair.
I like it. I like it. Um, and I'm very like, I like reading like full series or like things that are like already have like more than one book out. Just like go to the next one because I hate waiting. So I read
Same.
both this and Touch of Poison like back to back. So that was really fun for me to like continue the story. So who was your favorite character to write and why?
I always find when I'm doing like multi POV, it's kind of whoever I'm writing at the moment
Hmm?
because I'll be like, oh yeah, I love this thing about this character, um and then so maybe I'm writing a cat scene. I'm like, yes, cat. Like I love her little snarky bits of inner monologue and how she's kind of not really spoilers, but like finding herself and stuff like that in the series. But then I'll move on to a Bastion scene and I'll be like, oh yeah, but the way he kind of sees the world is kind of different and um his are trying to like say things without being spoilery, but yeah, kind of like how he views certain things, um and the fact that he kind of has this strong, maybe kind of intimidating to some people exterior, but then he's still got his complexities and not necessarily insecurities, but um fears and kind of misbeliefs under that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I kind of go, oh yeah, but then, and I'd say maybe out of the secondary kind of characters, Ella, so the scene with Ella in, it's just like, what is the most outrageous thing Ella will say? Oh, she's already said it. Here we go. Like she's off. She doesn't need me. So she's always really fun to write.
Awesome. Um, what would you say the most challenging part of writing this book was?
I would say this series has like a lot of trauma for the characters,
Hmm.
and like past trauma and sometimes current trauma, and like there are things that some of them have experienced that I have experienced, but there are things that some of them experienced that I haven't, and either I haven't experienced it or I've experienced something that's kind of different but connected. And I'm just always really aware that I don't ever want to disrespect people for whom that is a lot more real.
Hmm.
And I don't want to shortchange characters either. But I do, so it's kind of like that's on one side. But then on the other, I do want those characters to be able to kind of grow and not be trapped or lost in their trauma forever. Like, so like if you think like they maybe started in the depths of their trauma and like they'll never escape or forget the thing that triggered it, but hopefully they're no longer in the depths. So I kind of want them to show that growth, but that they're still with them. So it's like the kind of that to me that feels more realistic than, oh, I'm okay now.
Right. I mean, trauma, like, I mean, I'm a mental health counselor and I'm literally looking at something I have about living the legacy of trauma and working through trauma. But I think, I mean, that makes it more realistic, for people to relate to. But I definitely understand what you're saying about like the representation and like, I mean that, we have sensitivity readers, luckily, as an option. But not every life is just not all rainbows and butterflies, unfortunately, all the time. So I think just making in a fantasy world, making it feel real is really, really cool.
Mm. Yeah, and that's it. It's like I might be writing about, guys who can control shadows and shadows that can
Hmm?
touch stuff or, whatever, magic and things. But yeah, it's still the people have to be real, and I think that's really important to me.
Well, um, what is your favorite line from the book? Do you have a favorite quote, or maybe it's not favorite quote, favorite scene?
Um, I'll just talk about book one because I don't want to. I guess the people who there's no point talking about book two and it's like what I don't even know. Favorite scene might be the picnic scene in Kiss of Iron. Um, so the main character Kat is kind of mid-sized, plus size, curvy, um, and she loves sweet food. Like she loves cake. That is her happy place. Particularly because like at the beginning of the series, she doesn't have much money, and in that kind of era, sugar's so expensive. So then she's at someone's picnic and they've paid for everything, and there's like platters of cake. So she's like, I'm just gonna have another cake. Um, and someone goes, Are you sure you should have another cake? Um, but Bastian and Asher make them regret saying that. Let's say.
And I think, more than, along with mental health representation, like plus size, mid-size representation obviously is pretty important to me considering that's what I look like. So I always appreciate,
Um,
yeah, I
you
appreciate.
can see me under here.
So, sometimes when we write, we have, ideas of what our characters look like in our head. Is there anybody who's like an established like model actor, actress that you would envision as your main characters?
Yeah, do you know what? In some books I find that kind of like head casting so easy, but with these guys it's been so hard.
Mhm.
But the other day I was watching a film with Bryce Dallas Howard, and I was like, she would make an amazing cat, I think. Like her facial features, I think would work really well. Her figure, I was like, oh yeah, I can see. Yeah, I quite like her for cat. I've never heard her do an English accent, I don't think so. I'd have to audition her to check. Just call me. uh, as and Bastian, I think he's a lot harder. Like, I don't think I've seen anyone been like, yes, that's what I had in my head. But I know, so I never watched Vampire Diaries, but I've got quite a few friends, and I know a lot of readers have, and a lot of people have been like, Ian Somerhalder's character in that. I was like, is it Damon? Am I remembering rightly? Yeah. I was like, yeah, I could see. I don't know if he can do like the charming and sort of slightly more sarcastic side of Bastion. I don't know, but definitely the broody, slightly
Hmm.
dangerous side. I can see him doing that.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. So we'll move on to the last part of the interview. Just some like fun questions. So other than reading, what are things that you enjoy doing in your free time?
Um, so I tend to. I've currently got a really bad knee injury, so that's kind of knocked me out of things. But normally I try and go to the gym like 5 days a week. That was what I'd hit. I'd managed to hit my challenge of that. And kind of like I do weightlifting with my with a personal trainer. And I've never been into sport. I've never been athletic. I was never that kid kind of thing. But yeah, since like just sort of discovering weights, like I do cardio as well, but discovering weights, I'm like, oh, I actually enjoy this. So that's really nice. And we do like tabletop role playing with some friends, like D&D, do that once a week as well. Um, and I'm starting to get back into drawing again, which I used to do a lot. Like I said, I was into design and stuff. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. As a kid, I was either lying on the floor drawing or reading a book. Those are kind of my two modes. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to get back into that and just doing it on my iPad because it's like I don't have to clear up after.
That's true. The iPad's definitely good for that. Um, and this is my favorite question of the interview. What are some books or authors that you would recommend?
So I actually wrote it down because I'm that person who, as soon as you say that to me, I'm like, what are books? I don't remember a
Yeah.
single book I've ever
Yeah.
read. Like it's what I don't know why your brain does that, but I'm 100% that person. So I wrote some down. So I'd recommend Sylvia Mercedes, and she's also bonus that she's like a really lovely person as well. Um, yeah, her writing is just so it's that I always find that she writes that like along that perfect line between sort of lyrical and enjoyable from a like, as when you're kind of like, oh, the just the structure of that sentence or the way she described that is gorgeous, but also still really just so readable as well. You're not like bogged down in anything. So yeah, I love that about her writing. Nisha J. Tooley, Nisha, May Sage. I really enjoyed Rebecca F. Kenny's The Sea Witch. I was
Mhm.
like, whoo. Um, and I'm really excited to pick up a couple of books I'm about to start reading is House of Crimson Hearts by Ruby Rowe. So
Mm.
that's a sapphic vampire fantasy. Um, yeah, so I was going to pick up that. And I really enjoyed as well The Wicked Witch of Creekspiel by S.L. Prater. So yeah, there's some I really enjoyed, or ones I'm about to read.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll definitely have to pick up some of those too. I just downloaded this morning Rebecca Kenny's new book, The Serpent of Sky and Flame. Is that what it
Oh
is?
yes, I've seen like the
Yes,
artwork she's been
it just
sharing
came
with that
out
and
today.
stuff.
So I just downloaded that this morning. I haven't read a book by her yet though. So I'll start with that one, but then I'm gonna go to the Sea Witch, like you said, because I
I
love.
really like her writing is again really readable, but also then she has such good character gut punches. I've read a
Mm.
couple of her books now, and it's just like, oh, I was kind of, maybe thinking, oh, I was gonna get like a steamy read, and then you're like, oh, in the heart. Like, thanks for that.
That's so funny. Um, if you had to give advice to a younger you or an aspiring author, what would that advice be?
So I kind of did half of this advice when I was younger, and so I'm kind of modifying it because of what I've learned since, let's say. So it'd be learn the rules and then learn how to break them.
Mm.
So I was a very good girl and learned all the rules. And then I've kind of spent the past five, well, 5, 6, 7 years like learning how to bend them and break them in a way that still works.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's so easy to, read writing advice and be like, oh, don't use adverbs. Oh, show, don't tell, blah, blah, blah. All of those things that you've heard if you spent like 5 minutes in the writer space. Um, but yeah, like also that doesn't mean don't ever use an adverb and like there are places for them and there are places to tell and things like that. So yeah, learning how, when, and why to kind of break those rules as well.
I really like that, because I'm trying to write my book and I'm just reading a lot of books about like editing and things like that and kind of, like the rules that, you should follow so that you kind of don't have to go back and edit like a ridiculous amount like with like the little
Mm.
but I'm just like okay, like that sounds great. Like I read the Artful Edit this week and one of the things was she's like, when you're writing, don't go back and read it right away. Like write everything and then go back when you're going to edit. And I was like, that's so hard for me because having ADHD, like I just like want to make sure that it's good before. And then she also said, like, if that's hard for you on a computer, write it in a notebook. And not that that's bad advice, but I'm just like, but then you're gonna have to write it like
Yeah,
anyway to have other
that's not
people.
very efficient feeling.
So I
Yeah.
was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't, like, I'm like, well, I think I'm just gonna figure it out and, and just do it, whatever works. But, learning the rules and then breaking them. I love that. I really do.
And I would say to that, like the idea of not going back and read stuff. So for me, what I did or had to do to finish writing my first book, bear in mind, like I said, I was like about 12 years old, sat down at the thing, I was like, I'm going to write a novel. So, first time I did that, I was that age, but I didn't actually finish one until I was in my 30s. Um, and the things I kind of had to do to get myself to finish my first book are not the same things that I do now. So yeah, my first book, I was like, no, just keep going, don't go back and start editing stuff, just keep moving forward, because otherwise, you'll get locked in that loop. And I think that's often why people give that piece of advice. But now I kind of cycle through, so I'll like write some chapters and then I'll kind of hit a point where I may be slowing off a bit, or I kind of feel like I need to go back. It's quite intuitive. And then I'll go back and start editing through those. And that's when it kind of gets passed to like my beta readers and stuff. Um, but yeah, so kind of any writing advice I would take with a pinch of salt, because you'll see someone else
Mhm.
somewhere else who will recommend the exact opposite thing. So yeah, if that doesn't work for you, but equally maybe you need to force yourself to do that and then not do that in future. And it's just, I'd say the process changes
It
like across all
evolves.
the books I've written. Yeah, definitely.
Good to know. Good to know. So you did say that you do wear headphones and you do listen to music and you have a specific playlist. Does that playlist have words, no words, mix? What does that look like for you?
It's mostly words. I
Yes.
know a lot of people are like, oh, I only listen to instrumental music because
Yeah.
it distracts them. um but yeah, I don't know if it's just that I've listened to that music so much that it becomes almost background. I'm so used to it, so I don't engage with the words too much. Um, but yeah, no, I have all sorts of like pop music. There is some instrumental stuff in there, like usually soundtrack stuff from films or games. But yeah, I'm one of the ones who can listen to the words and not.
Isn't
I
that
think
right?
it's because, yeah, I think it's because largely the music and the earphones are more about closing out, shutting out everything else rather than I'm listening to them. Because
Mm,
I'll be writing and I have no idea what song is playing until I maybe stop and go, oh, okay.
mm-hmm. That makes sense. I can see that. I can definitely see that. But I also think that, being neurospicy, I think definitely contributes to like I multitask really well. So I think that that's a positive for that too. Um, so the setting for your books, is there anywhere that you've been or obviously that you've seen that kind of inspired the world for you?
So so all of my books are in the Saberverse. That's Sabre, not Sega. um because the Saber cats are in it. Um and that's kind of a sort of 18th century-ish version of our world, but also not. Um, so I seem to have this bad habit of going to places after I finish writing about them. Um, so in The Kiss of Iron, you do briefly meet and hear a bit about Kat's sister. And there's I've got a series of pirate books, and so they're all in like that world's version of the Caribbean. And I finished that series in 2022, I think it was. I think so. Um, and then last year, 2023, in March, we went for our wedding anniversary to Antigua, which is actually in one of the books.
You said
Um,
Antigua?
so I got to visit it, but after I finished writing about it.
You said Antigua?
Yes, sorry,
Oh,
yeah.
Antigua too.
And then, yeah, it's lovely. I really enjoyed it. I've never really done a tropical holiday like that, so it was quite different. But I was like, I feel like I kind of got the vibes about right. And then obviously the last book in this series comes out in June, and in September, on our way either to or from um, Edinburgh, we're going to be stopping off at a place called Alnwick Castle, which has got a poison garden. And I really wanted to visit there because of obviously poison being part of this series. But I'm going to finish writing the series by the time I get to go there. So yeah, that's developed into my new habit of being able to get to places after I finished writing about them.
Well, what better time than the present, right? It's cool. You can do things out of order.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll get pictures that I can put on social media and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's not gone to waste.
cool, cool. So then the last question is kind of just why I tacked on because I'm like, oh, like that'd be a great question to ask. Any upcoming events or signings that you have going on?
Yes. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be at Polycon in Washington, DC. So that'll be my first ever like bookish event as an attendee or an author. So I'm a bit like, oh my goodness, like starting with a big one, and in another country as well. Um, then at the beginning of June, I'm at Authors at the Armories in Leeds. In September, the reason I'm going to Edinburgh with my husband is that we're going for Rare Edinburgh.
Mhm.
And then October, we're going to Romantasy Book Con in Orlando. So I've somehow managed to pack four into this year. And future me may regret that, but we're going with it. I'll have fun.
It will be fun, getting to, meet readers. I think that that's probably just so cool. That must be such a cool experience. And I will be at Romantic Book Con, so hopefully we'll be able.
Yay!
Well,
Yeah, I'm super excited for them.
it's also I've never been to the hotel, but I think it's really cool that's on Disney property, in right next to Disney Springs, like walking distance. So that's pretty cool. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I'm a Disney freak.
I only went for the first time, not
Setting
last year, the year
I have
before.
this,
Oh,
I have a tattoo, and
you can't see, but I do have a lightsaber on the shelf
oh
behind
my
me.
gosh,
So
Hollywood Studios then because Rise of the Resistance is the best ride I've ever been on in my life. It's like a 20-minute.
yes,
It's amazing. It's so good.
yeah. We were like, that was not a ride, it was an experience, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that was like the best ride ever. All right. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for taking time to talk with me today. I'm so excited for the final book. Can't wait to grab that one and can't wait to see each other in October. It'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I've had a really great time. And
Me too.
yeah, I will see you in October in person. That'd be awesome.
Sounds great. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.